I want to thank you very much for joining us on the Canadian Securities Exchange's Instagram live channel. Today is Tuesday. We are talking about Cannabis Week that we started off as Cannabis Week. It's now gone into Cannabis Month 520. And we're wrapping up the month this week. So I'm glad that we had a chance to talk to you. Why don't we begin by you giving our audience and listeners maybe a little brief intro into CFN Media and what you guys do?
Fantastic. Thank you, Anil. Well, CFN Media, we are a digital media platform and agency dedicated to the global cannabis and now psychedelics industries. And what we do is we help companies in those industries attract investors, capital, and media attention at scale.
Got it. Sorry, I apologize. I said it's Tuesday, but it's actually Wednesday. It's a West Coast Wednesday edition.
And we had a holiday. We had a holiday on Monday, so I don't even know what day it is.
They all meld into one. So Anna, thank you very much for that heads up. She made a little comment. For any of our listeners, I'm going to turn the comment section off so we're not getting distracted. But there is a comment box that you will see. You're able to type in your comments there. Time permitting, I'll make sure to go through those with Frank, and hopefully we can get him to answer those. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn the comments off. So you mentioned you're in Seattle right now.
Yeah, in Seattle. And as a company, we're spread out. We, even pre-COVID, we were already social distancing in that we didn't have a single facility that we all grouped in. We're pretty well spread out through most of the U.S. We even have an office in Calgary.
Yeah.
And we're a digital company, so we were already doing things online before. So it hasn't been too much of an adjustment, although adjusting to what our clients' needs have been the biggest adjustment.
Got it. And how are things? I know Richard and myself had a chance to come out to the studio space in LA. I think it was almost a year ago that we had come out there, or just about to be a year. So how's the team out there?
Yeah, and that interview that Richard did was terrific. I remember being with him at a conference, and he had said that when he put that in his LinkedIn, he got the most likes that he had received in any other piece of content. So that was great, and he was great to do it. The studio, as you've mentioned, is in Los Angeles, and they are really focusing on our software capabilities. We now are interviewing our clients wherever they're at in their offices. And what's great about software is when you're viewing the video, you'd never think it was remote. It's almost like watching a CNBC interview. So thank God for technology. Our core focus really, Anil, is to let the companies do the talking.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we watch CNBC. We're not really watching it for the host. We want to see the companies. And if we, resonate with them, then the chances are we're going to keep following them.
Of course. So things are going well. You've been able to obviously manage your teams all in Calgary, LA, and the various other places you yourself are out of Seattle. So as you mentioned earlier, technology has gotten us this far through COVID, which I think on another live that was on, I'd mentioned that if we weren't this far ahead in technologically speaking, it would have been really tough for people to cope these last 3 months or 2 months that you've been working from home. So that transition's been well for you guys.
It has, and I think when it's brought out, there's a lot of negative things about what's going on, but the positives are the way people adjust. Even in your country with cannabis delivery and pickup, here in the U.S., it's the same thing where states have allowed the dispensaries to provide curbside pickup and delivery. And I think those things are going to remain after COVID. So it's going to be a net plus,
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
No, I completely agree with you, because there was such a pushback against the delivery side of the dispensaries to begin with, that I think going through this pandemic stage and having that kind of push forward has really helped, because I don't think it's going to ever go back to where dispensaries can't do deliveries and stuff like that, because it's, consumer habits are going to get built that way. And eventually it's going to be ingrained in the back of your head, and that's just the way you're going to want it.
Great point.
So Frank, let's talk the different trends you guys have seen. Like I know you guys work with not only public companies, but also private companies within the cannabis space worldwide that are working within this sector. What sort of shift have you guys seen when it comes to companies not only using different platforms for communication, but also getting their message across virtually to, the world?
Yeah, great question. So one thing, the biggest thing I've seen, and it started before COVID, was a capital crunch that was occurring, where a lot of the dedicated funds that were set up early on in the industry to fund these companies, they essentially stopped funding, and they were really just focusing on the portfolio companies that they had, making sure that they were solvent, that they needed anything they needed, that they could get them. So they weren't really looking at new investments. And so what happened, if you were a private cannabis company and you may be in business, but you may not have a lot of assets, you may be driving some revenue, but you're really looking for expansion capital, maybe under 10 million. 3 years ago, you could go to a fund and, that's kind of where you'd start. Now, it's really about aggregating multiple smaller investors, whether they're accredited, if you're doing an accredited raise, or if you're doing some kind of crowdfunding. And so the only way to do that, to aggregate these, first to find them and then to aggregate them and bring them into your investment, is through technology. And so I'm seeing a lot of crowdfunding platforms, accredited investor funding platforms that are popping up that list these deals, if you will, these cannabis companies. And then the idea is you drive an audience to that platform. And that's where we come in, is digitally get these investors activated on a specific company's offering, drive them through a platform, and then you aggregate, many smaller investors into an investment. So a little different than before, but leveraging technology and digital outreach is really the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of us have kind of adapted that already in the past and have known that it's a key factor when it comes to getting your messaging out. It seems like there was a point in time where a lot of companies were up against that or didn't really understand that to be able to take full advantage of it. So I think, going through this pandemic, this working from home period has really helped make that shift. I don't know if you agree with that, but I certainly feel that that's what it's been. So what made you guys, how long has CFN been around, and what made you guys sort of build this platform and team?
Yeah, that is a great question, because it was 2013. It was kind of in the middle of that. It was before Canada had their full legal recreational regime, but they were in their medical. Colorado, our first state in the U.S., hadn't even gone legal. So if you think back in 2013, there was no state in the U.S. that was legal. Canada was in a medical program, and there was really talk about, getting a legal recreational regime in the country. But there was a lot of exuberance, and a lot of companies were starting to form. And what we saw was, especially in the U.S., because it was federally illegal, we knew that mainstream media would not come in, and either would kind of legacy IR and PR firms. So we did see an opportunity to kind of bridge the divide that was going to occur between these companies coming in and the investors they needed to reach. They couldn't use, things like Yahoo Finance or CNBC. So we built a digital network, and we all came from that space. We all came from digital financial media. So we quickly built a site, a newsletter, social media. We started putting content out, and we started attracting an audience, and that's really the genesis of it.
Interesting. Frank, I know over the last year or so, we've run into each other at numerous conferences. We've done interviews on your platform. We've worked on a few initiatives together as well. Now, for anybody joining us, I'm talking to Frank Lane. Frank is the president of CFN Media, and we'll be putting together an upcoming initiative, or we have put together an upcoming initiative that focuses on investing in psychedelics. Talk to me a little bit about that for our audience members that might not know. Why the psychedelic space, and why is everybody talking about it right now?
Yes, it's the more I delve into it, the more interesting I think that the industry is. I mean, it has roots back into the 50s and 60s when there was a lot of research and development done on psychedelics as a mental health treatment. And then during the Nixon administration, for various reasons, a lot of that was shut down and it went dormant for years. And we saw what happened with the opiate crisis,
Absolutely.
where, you know, there's got to be a different way. And I think what's reactivated investors is that, you know, a few years ago, the FDA started looking at psychedelics and giving companies that are putting it through trials so that they can actually get it approved. The FDA was giving those companies breakthrough designation to make it easier and quicker for them to go through the trial. So that's what really started percolating investor interest. And now we're seeing trials going on in Canada, the US, and in Europe. So this is now a global phenomenon. And it's, you know, it's going to be like a pharma play in that in a few years, it could result in some big commercialized drugs. But I think the most important thing to me is if you look at how the drug works, it doesn't take a lot of dosage to be effective. We're talking about small dosage in the presence of a therapist, and it can have an effect for 6 months versus taking antidepressants every day. So that's really the breakthrough there, is how it will have a better outcome and fewer side effects for people.
Got it. Now, when you talk, when we talk psychedelics and we say psychedelics, you know, there's a few that come to mind right away. Obviously, the psilocybin, LSD, and things like that. What are some of the other ones that groups and companies and researchers are working on right now that will be highlighted? Yeah,
it's a great question. Here's how I tell investors how to think between the cannabis and psychedelics industry. If you think about the cannabis industry, at least here in the United States, as long as it's been going, there's been only one drug, cannabis-based drug, that the FDA has approved, and that is by GW Pharmaceutical. They're a pharma company out of England. They're listed on a major exchange, and they developed a drug called Epidiolex that's basically CBD for childhood epilepsy, which is a great drug to have. Okay. But think about it. There's only been one drug approved throughout cannabis. Right now in psychedelics, there are multiple trials going on for multiple initiatives, from depression, PTSD, addiction, and so many different kinds of treatment cases, and it could lead to many different kinds of drugs. And that's what's so inspiring about this industry, is that it's fairly new after kind of being resurrected, but there's so many drugs that are in the process. Psilocybin, which is not approved yet, and that comes from the mushroom, that's being trialed. Ketamine is a psychedelic that is approved in the US, and it's used in clinics. And like you mentioned, there's MDMD, there's LSD, and a few others that are now under trial for specific treatments.
Got it. And I like that you mentioned that, you know, this is going to be a pure pharma play. You know, a lot of investors and people that are curious about this space don't really know, is it going to be a pharma play? Is it going to be a recreational thing? I truly don't feel that, you know, the psychedelics, some of these other ones anyways, will be part of the recreational campaign. Maybe psilocybin at one point in time, but I think the pharma plays are what's going to help push that forward.
Exactly. And, you know, I talked to a few bankers on this, and they gave me some really good insight. They said, Frank, there's a long and short game to how investors are viewing this. The long game is the drug. So if they can get a drug under trial and approved, and it addresses a mental health disorder, addiction, PTSD, depression, then that could be a big win in 3 years. It could be a commercialized drug, and if you invested early, you could do well. But you have to wait a few years. The short play is on the mushroom side. There are companies now that are using mushrooms for functional foods and for health benefits.
That's right.
And that could be commercialized right away, and revenue can be driven from that early on. So that would be the short play.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Carl Sailing from Hollister last week, and we were talking about some of these, not psilocybin mushrooms, but herbal mushrooms, I don't know if that's the right term for it, that you might want to call it, that, you know, have been used in Eastern medicine and practices for generations and centuries, if I'm right. So I think those will definitely come out. I think I've seen mushroom coffees and a bunch of other stuff that are using those right now. So it's going to be really interesting. Why don't I let you talk to our audience about this initiative that we've put together as partners?
You know, it's so exciting, and it's interesting. I may not have this entirely correct, but the CSE actually did a survey. And I think one of the questions was, what is the most interesting emerging market? And I think the top three were psychedelics, esports, and fintech. And so, you know, my company, CFN and CSE, we have worked together on a few other initiatives, interviews, and so forth. But last month, Anil and I came together, and it seems longer than that, and said, you know, we should do a free psychedelics virtual conference together, because you're starting to list the companies and we are starting to talk to some of the private companies. And I think that there's an opportunity here to bring together experts in the space on the medical and financial side, bankers, companies, right? And really give investors a free opportunity to come in for themselves and see where the opportunities are and hear directly from companies in the space.
Absolutely. And to add to it, so for anyone that might be interested, the live event online will take place on June the 17th.
Which is a Wednesday.
And leading up to that, we're going to be putting out little mini micro sessions that will give you a little bit of insight into not only thought leaders within the space, but also the companies that will be participating. We've got a huge list of not only public traded companies that are going to be part of this discussion and online conference, but also a number of private companies. So it's a great chance for investors to come on there and, before everybody else finds out about them, to hear from, you know, the CEOs and the doctors and researchers that are part of these companies and groups.
Great point. And the thing I like about it is it's going to be organized on a panel. So you're not going to go in there and hear sales pitches from all these companies. They're really going to talk broadly in terms of what they're seeing in the capital markets, how they're raising capital, how they're executing their business model. So I think it'll be really organic and really replicating what you would see in a real conference when you're there to see the experts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it because, you know, when we were first putting it together, we weren't sure if it would work, if people would be receptive to it. But, you know, as we get closer and closer and closer, and we're talking to a lot of these public, private companies, just the response that we're getting has been phenomenal. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited to be working with you guys and your team on this. I know Anna Saren has been putting in a lot of work behind the scenes on this, coordinating with the companies, putting together interviews. So Anna, we do definitely appreciate everything that you're doing here behind the scenes. Where do you think, like, how long do you think this is going to be where it's almost mainstream to guys like you and me that are part of the industry, but for the common mom and pop, the same way they kind of rushed into the cannabis space? What do you think that will be like? Do you think that's going to be the same sort of reception that psychedelics are going to get, that the cannabis space got?
You know, that is one of the
million-dollar questions
and most important questions I've heard. I think, well, I'll tell you what, I live in the U.S., so I can just tell you what I'm seeing here. When cannabis started, it started on the decriminalization side in cities, and then it got to states, and then states finally allowed a medical regime and now some recreational. And what I'm seeing on the psychedelic side is the cities, it's the same thing is happening. Cities like Denver have decriminalized the use of psychedelics. And you can just see that that's, with these FDA trials, it's just going to progress. And I think it'll progress a little faster because it's not, I don't think the end game here is a recreational model, although that probably can happen. But I think initially it's all about mental health. And Anil, I'm seeing this everywhere. I was talking to a group out of Australia, and they said that almost 40% of Australians will deal with some kind of mental health disorder during their life. And they said it's actually getting worse, and the treatments are not there. And so I just think that this is going to be a global realization. And now that we're dealing with a global pandemic, I think more and more people are really looking for better, more healthy ways to treat, their mental health.
Absolutely, because at one point in time, I think people were so reliant on opioids and medication that it almost became the new norm. And you
Yeah.
see the effects that communities are going through it right now, where, it's accessible to kids, and all sorts of stuff that's happening around it. So I completely agree with you that there's going to be a shift when it comes to that. So we've got, a bunch of public companies. There's Hollister, there's Revive Therapeutics, Champignon Brands that will be participating in it. I know you've been concentrating a lot on the private side of things as well. You want to maybe name drop a couple that people can look out for?
Yeah, thanks. Anil, the way I've seen the industry kind of break down, I kind of see two sides of it. There's what I call the drug development side. So those are the companies that are, really doing innovative research and development on a new way to create these psychedelics. And some of it is synthetic. And that's what you need if you're going to scale into pharma. And then, so that's the drug side. And then there's what I call the patient interaction side. These drugs have to be taken in the presence of a therapist in a clinic. And there's all of these clinics that are opening up. And so when I think of clinics, I think of Field Trip Health. They're a great example of a company that is building out clinics in major US and Canadian population centers where people can go in, have a real medical therapist administer the drug and make sure that it works correctly. On the drug development side, there's interesting companies like Bright Minds Therapeutics, Bright Minds Bio, Entheon Bio. Another company comes to mind, Bright Minds. And then what's interesting is there's some ancillary plays too. Remember, in all of this, technology will always be a part of it. And there's companies now that are creating digital health platforms so that the doctor, patient, and therapist can all get together online after the drug has been taken in aftercare. And so a company that comes to mind is MindLeap. They are an all digital health platform. They have an app so a patient can use that at home and talk to their therapist and really go through the actual treatment. And this company was actually just acquired by a CSE listed company called New Leaf Brands. Yeah. So you can see there's already M&A going on, not just companies going public and raising capital.
Frank, my other question to you would be you're so immersed in this space right now, talking to a lot of the private companies that will eventually hopefully go public. Do you see a certain region that kind of is taking the lead when it comes to the psychedelic research and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of companies working with Health Canada right now to get licensed to produce and handle psychedelics. And I'm also seeing a dealer's license where they'll be able to export it. So I think there's going to be some export opportunities here to actually make the psilocybin or the psychedelic substance at scale and then export it to other countries that are going to use it for medicine. There's, like I said, there's a number of trials going on with the FDA that are approved. So everything is legal there and in Europe. And there was, and so I really am seeing this as a global, it's almost happening simultaneously in multiple countries.
It's such an interesting time and shift when it comes to these things. And I truly feel that the benefits will definitely help when it comes to, PTSD and helping communities get off these opioids.
Exactly.
So June 17th is the live event. It will be, virtually live event. If anybody is looking for additional information on how to register, it's a completely free event. You can either go to the CSE website or CFN Media and be able to register for this event. Leading up to June 17th, we'll be providing you guys with additional content. It's going to be short format interviews with thought leaders, the companies within the space, so you can find out a little bit more and learn about companies and what they're doing within the space. I wanted to also, Frank, talk a bit about, you guys have started a new initiative at CFN. It's the Capital Investment Readiness Program.
Yeah.
What's that?
Thanks for asking. It's a free online e-course, and it's interesting. There's a company called Mazzucchelli. They're based out of San Francisco, so they're kind of in the Silicon Valley area, so they're around a lot of technology, and they're investment advisors. So what they do is they help cannabis companies, and they've been doing this for years, raise capital. So they make sure that the company has all the documents in place, all the due diligence forms that investors will want. And once those are in place, they'll go out and start making introductions to investors that are in their network. Well, luckily, a year ago, they realized that they needed to make a digital platform. This was long before COVID, and they launched it recently. And it was what I was discussing earlier. It's a digital platform that lists, it's like a crowdfunding platform that lists these offerings. And we're kind of the marketing arm. So we are the ones that are targeting accredited investors and driving them into this platform to look at the deals. And in talking to Mazzucchelli, we realized that, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that have never raised significant capital. And for them, they've got to go and hire a big advisory firm and spend a lot of money kind of, you know, getting all these things in place. And we thought, you know, because capital is so tight now, why don't we make a free course that will educate these companies that have never raised capital, or at least significant capital. Maybe they've done it through friends and family, but really going out and raising significant capital. Let's make a 2-week free e-course that they can sign up for, and they're sent a new module through email every third day, and that will take them through all the steps from putting down a pitch deck, what needs to go in there, doing a pro forma that will show projections, putting a cap table together on who owns the company, setting a valuation. You know, you watch Shark Tank, and the first thing that they have to know when they get there is, what are they valuing their company at?
Yeah.
What percentage are they going to give away, and what will they give it away for? So all those things will be in place at the end of the 2-week course. And it's not only instruction, but it also gives templates, actual templates that you can use and download to help you build these decks and performas. And so, yeah, it's a great a course. And of course, I can send the link out to all the people that were online today.
Yeah, definitely. Why don't you let our audience know where they can find out more info on not only the virtual Investing in Psychedelics conference, but also, you know, stuff that CFN is working on, as well as this Capital Investment Readiness Program.
Yeah, thank you. If you go to our website and you're a first-time visitor, you will receive a little pop that will invite you to the free e-course. And all you have to do is enter your email address, and you'll start receiving it. And then under conferences, you will see our CSE CFN Virtual Psychedelics Conference. And that address is Cannabis FN. So that's Cannabis, F as in financial, N as in network.com.
Got it. Frank, I know we're getting to the time that where you have to go. There is a question. Let me just make sure that it's relatable to what we're talking about. I don't see it. It said that there was a question, but there's nothing there. So we'll leave that as is. I do really appreciate your time, and it's been great working with you and your team to launch this initiative. Again, for our listeners and viewers, it will be on June the 17th. You can definitely go to the CSE website and sign up so you can receive our pre-recorded micro sessions that lead up to our live event. Again, this has been a West Coast Wednesday edition. I got it right this time with Frank Lane. Frank is Frank is the president of CFN Media. And Frank, I truly appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to having you on here once we wrap up the virtual Investing in Psychedelics portion, and then we can talk about the good and bad from there. Great idea. I'd love to do it, Anil, and thank you so much for hosting me. Of course, Frank. It's always a pleasure working with you and your team, so thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Canadian Securities Exchange for allowing us to host conversations like this on their platform. It's great to have, thought pieces from industry leaders from both sides of the border and all over the world, actually, because we've had people from all over. For anybody listening, and if you like this content, please follow us on all our social media channels. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram, where you're watching us. But also tomorrow, as part of our wrap up to Cannabis Month, my colleague Barrington Miller will be talking to Jennifer Drake. She's with Air Strategies. And then on Friday, we come to you with a 1-2 punch. My colleague Anna Sarin from the West Coast will be talking to Anthony Sandler. Anthony is with the Barber Group, which is part of the Mackey Research Group, Mackey Research. And later on that day at 11:15, I'll be talking to Corey, who's the CEO of Tube. So I hope you guys find this content informative and like it. And please do follow us and feel free to share all our stuff. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a great day, Frank.
Thank you, Neil. All the best.